Oh, hi everybody. Really excited to have Jennie Nash online with me this morning here and nighttime over there, or evening. So Jennie is living in Santa Barbara, California, just for some context. I always like to know where people are from. I I do have a connection actually. My daughter lived in Santa Barbara for about 5 years and I have been there. So I was sort of pretty stoked when I saw that you were from Santa Barbara. So Jennie's many things. Firstly an author. I'm doing this kind of sequence, I suppose. I know you had an early career in publishing, then you became an author yourself, and then a book coach with other authors, and then more recently established Author Accelerator as a coaching organization for book coaches. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that and hear what is it that most excites you about that company that you've built from the ground up.
Oh gosh, I am so excited about what we're doing at Author Accelerator. It's become something beyond my wildest dreams, actually. I originally thought that I was going to start a kind of book coaching agency where I would farm out other people to do book coaching, and that proved to be disastrous for a number of reasons. So I shifted to teaching other people about book coaching and how to run their own businesses. And we have such a thriving community, and it's just this robust, awesome, generous place of learning, and I'm just so glad to be part of it. It's an amazing thing, and all of the book coaches, particularly those that were certified early on and are out there doing this work and have been doing this work for some time now, they're the pioneers and they're doing incredible work. And our coaches are all kinds of different kinds of coaching for different kinds of writers and different kinds of people, and they're just spreading the awesomeness of what book coaching can do for writers and can be for writers. And so I'm just excited to hold space for those coaches and to continue to try to teach them what they want to know and learn from
Mm.
me and from each other. And it's exciting. The changes in publishing are coming fast and hard right now. It's kind
Mm.
of a wild time. And I think the thing that remains constant in all of that is that writers are going to write, and they're going to want to write well, and they're going to want to learn how to do that, and to get the support of a trained professional to help them on their way. I think it's always going to be a powerful way to write and to bring books into the world. I always say we don't need more bad books, but we need all the good books. So
Yes.
I'm just really excited to see what our coaches are going to do, and to continue to make that space to train and support them.
Mm. Well, I'm really thrilled to be part of that community. It took me a couple of years to finish my certification, but I got there, and I can say from my perspective, being a part of that international community is it's quite incredible. And as you said, very, very generous, and the diversity of people that have been attracted to the profession of book coach is really very exciting. So I guess for people who are not really sure what a book coach does, how would you summarize that?
Well, we all know what an editor does. An editor comes in when something is finished to bring a fresh perspective and view to it to try to make it better. And any writer who's ever been edited has usually loved that process, because there's just something about having someone else in it with you that is such a relief, and you can pitch and catch your ideas back and forth with that person and make your work more of what you want it to be. It's an amazing thing to be well edited. But a book coach is going to bring that kind of attention and care to the whole process of writing. So throughout the process, from the beginning when you're just getting your idea, to when you're developing your book, to when you're revising it, and all the way through to trying to get it out into the world. So a book coach is going to typically work with a writer for a longer period of time than an editor, and it's going to be much more relationship focused and focused on that writer and that writer's habits, and getting that work done. So we're more part of the ongoing process than an editor would be. So
Mm.
I like to say it's an editor plus all these other amazing things that are so helpful to writers.
Definitely. And I think one thing that concerned me at the start was that I thought for a little while I had to be an editor first before I became a book coach. But then, I realized, no, it's separate functions. And, I've got a good relationship with some editors who kind of take over with my clients from after I've done the book coaching part. So just to also give people some more perspective of your background. So what genres have you written yourself?
I've written 12 books in 3 genres. So I've written fiction, I've written memoir, and I've written nonfiction. So I've done all the things, and I've also published in many different ways. I was my first books were with Big Five publishers, and I did that for quite a while. And my most recent ones have been independently published. I brought them out myself. So I've experienced the several different paths to publishing, as well as writing different genres. And it's interesting because I think writers and book coaches, I think we can all benefit from reading broadly and reading outside of what we teach or coach, and just reading stories from people we might not expect we would like, just to really be open to all of the books out there, because they all help you to be a better writer and to be a better book coach. A nonfiction coach who understands the way fiction works and the way narrative unfolds is going to be able to bring something to that coaching process that somebody trained only in how to write nonfiction won't bring. And I think there's a richness to doing all the things and having all of the tools and being able to help your clients, which is what we're about at the end of the day, is helping writers write better books. And anything that we can use to do that, I think is helpful.
Definitely. So I know with my certification, I'm certified in nonfiction, but I know that you have written in all those 3 genres. You've coached others in those 3 genres, but you've also published more recently 3 books about those 3 genres. So let's sort of focus in on those now.
Yes, that's the Blueprint series.
Yes.
And the Blueprint is a tool to help writers get their ideas out of their head and onto the page. It's a 14-step process. And how it differs from other tools is that it is about the writer and about their idea in a more holistic way, about why they want to write it, who they want to write it for, what their goals are, and looking at the big picture structure and design of those books, ideally before you start to write. But the Blueprint is also a tool that can be used to assess a piece of writing once you're finished. And I started with Blueprint for a book, which is about fiction writing. And I just looked the other day because I remember getting a 1-star review for that book and somebody complaining that it was very short. And I remember wanting it to be very short on purpose. I wanted it to be this quick, bite-sized way of learning these big ideas and of working through them as a writer or a coach. The second book I wrote was Blueprint for a nonfiction book, and that got a little longer because I was then talking about approaching publishers and the path to publishing and writing a book proposal, which is part and parcel of most nonfiction projects. And I just finished Blueprint for a memoir, which is coming out in less than 10 days from when we are speaking. And what's hilarious is that book is 290 pages. So my impetus to keep it short and tight has gone out the window, and the Blueprint for a memoir is the most robust of them all. And I showed myself that I've learned a few things in the years since I did the first one, which is always a good thing to keep learning.
Cool. And I know, Jenny, you've had book coaches to help you write your books about book coaching, which is it's good to know that everybody can benefit from external expertise. It doesn't matter what we're talking about.
Oh my goodness, I don't know how anybody writes without a book coach. Once you do it, it's just such a joy to we all have that experience of trying to get somebody that loves you to pay attention to your work, whether that's a partner or a spouse or a mother or a friend or, your neighbor who's a writer or whatever, trying to beg for their attention. What do you think about this idea? Or what do you think about this concept? Or what do you think about this chapter? We're hungry for outside feedback. That's what closes the loop for a writer, is when somebody else reads the work. And with the book coach, you have someone right there to be that for you and to bounce ideas back and forth and help you sort out what you mean. And even when the coach gets it wrong, when they say, oh, so I hear you saying this, and you're like, no, that is not what I meant. What I meant was this other thing. That process of talking it out and discussing and thinking is so powerful. I love being coached, and I'm very blessed by the fact that the coaches I've trained are so good that I get to pick and choose among many awesome people. So I created a world in which I get to have colleagues who are people that I trained, and then of course many of those folks also become friends. So it's an amazing process.
Yeah, definitely. So today we wanted to just talk more about business books specifically. I know, so let's talk about your blueprint for nonfiction books. And I know all of your books start with asking the author why. So why do you start the blueprint with why?
I have found that the vast majority of writers don't stop to think about why they're writing. They just write. They feel this impulse, or they have this idea, something, ideas come to us in so many different ways. They come fast, or they linger and haunt us for years, and we have this pull to want to write. And too often people start into writing as a means to finding their way, and they find their way through writing, which is entirely possible. It is a thing that you can do. It's just very inefficient. And the whole point of the blueprint is to get you to stop for a short period of time. It can be a week, 2 weeks, and just step back and ask these questions. And I start with why, because if you don't know why you're writing a book, or what you're going to do with it once it's published, what is the metric for success for you for that book? Who are you trying to reach? What is your point? These fundamental questions. You're not going to design a good book. You're not going to write a book that meets the requirements of the reader. I mean, I say you're not going to. People do, they can. I think a lot of times we hear from famous writers who are geniuses at this sort of thing. They're not everyday folks trying to get their ideas out of their head. They have a natural genius towards it. And we think, oh, that's the way it's supposed to happen. You're supposed to just sit down and write this thing and somehow hold in your head all the pieces that will make that narrative work. And it doesn't work that way for almost anybody. And so starting with why is, in terms of nonfiction, are you using this for a business? Are you using this to support other work, whether that's speaking or giving workshops or selling products or selling courses or attracting certain business partnerships, for example? Are you hoping to be seen as a thought leader in your field? There's so many different uses for a nonfiction book, and asking yourself, okay, what is my purpose here? Why am I doing this? What do I really want to say? Why do I want to say it? And what are the boundaries of that idea? Is this one book? Is it 5 books? Is it a book and a course? Is it a book and a speech? Is it a book and a TED Talk? Is it, there's so many questions to ask. And so starting with why is the portal to all of those important questions.
Yeah, the book blueprint, the early part of the book blueprint, I think it's actually my favorite process to go through with people, because there's so many things that have to fall into place. And it's that fundamental question of why are you writing this book? I always ask people, and who do you want to be at the end of it? Or who do you want the world to see you as when this book comes out? Because that
I love
person
that.
that person has to show up and write the book, you know. And
I love that.
most of us hold ourselves back, but we can't get the result we want until we step into that result, you know, in our mind.
It's true. I just had a conversation with someone who's going to become my client, who had a book published with Penguin Portfolio, which is the largest business imprint of Penguin Random House, very prestigious. And I asked him how that process of writing that book went and how he liked that book and how it's gone in the world. And he said, "Oh, I hate that book, and I hated that process, and that's why I want to do it again, because I still feel like I didn't write the book that I wanted to write." You know, he got this big publishing deal, he got a lot of money, but it wasn't the book he wanted to write. And it was so interesting because this was in the first maybe 5 minutes of speaking to him, I said, "Well, what was your intention for that book? What was your goal and your strategy for it?" And he just stopped and he said, "Nobody ever asked me that. I never asked myself that. And that's what I need to do for this book going forward." You know, so you can have a successful outcome of a book project and not write the book that you want to write. And that's a terrible waste of time and resources and opportunity. So we want to make sure that you know what your intention is.
So it's having the end goal in mind and working backwards to a certain extent.
Exactly.
And then knowing where to start and going forwards. So
well, and what I find so curious, particularly about nonfiction, is that there's so many people that do that with writing a book who would never do that bringing a product into the world or starting some kind of business, or they would never just leap in and start doing it, would be so foolhardy, but they do that when they go to write a book.
And there's a lot of resources out there telling people how to write books. So there's heaps of information, but no, you're right. Sometimes in my business, because I do book coaching to help people start books, but I also do book production as well. And I'll often meet clients when they've written their book and hand the manuscript over. And sometimes they haven't had any assistance with the writing. And found it a really difficult process sometimes. But so going back to one of the things that we were going to talk about today is the difference between long books and short books. So I'd be interested to hear how you see those two formats would be different from each other, or how they would benefit somebody who's, say, got a business and they want to attract more clients to them.
It's such a good question, because what it gets at is this idea that books are not just one thing. When you say I'm going to write a book, it could mean so very many different things. And even just the idea of a short or a long book, or where that book is going to sit in your business plan. So by that I mean, there is an argument for writing a book that would be at the top of the funnel. So if you think of the marketing funnel and you're trying to attract clients or make people aware of what you do, or bring people down into your ecosystem, writing a book like that is going to have a very different function and probably a very different form than writing a book that comes later in the process. So later in the process, and by process I mean the process of your customers or clients engaging with you and what you do. So you could write a book that comes in the middle. So for example, I'm thinking of Michael Bungay Staniers, The Coaching Habit. He wrote that book to function as a kind of textbook for his consulting business. So he and his team go into companies and they use this book as a kind of textbook, and they run a workshop that is based on that book, and the book was designed for that purpose. And for that reason, it's very short. I actually did a word count on it because I was curious, and it's about 33,000 words. It's just very short for any book. But it so effectively does what it needs to do, and in that point in the customer journey for his business.
Mhm.
So we talked about a book at the top of the funnel to attract people to you. This is a book in the middle of the funnel to use while you're providing a service to somebody.
Mm.
And then there could be a book further down, deeper into your ecosystem. That might be the type of book what we would normally think of as like a thought leader book, the type of book that really invites people deep into your philosophy and your thinking and deep into your processes, and somebody who wants to spend a lot of time with you. Because a long book, so as we move down that funnel, I think books tend to get longer.
Mm.
And a long book has the unique power where somebody, a reader, is going to sit down and spend somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 or 30 hours with you, engaged with your ideas and your thoughts in a really intimate way. There's very little other than a book that can deliver that kind of engagement to somebody. So a long book that comes further down into that customer journey with you is going to have a very different function. And if you are writing a book, you can imagine that if you get this, you don't think this through, and you think that you're going to write that thought leader type book, and that's going to attract people into your business, it may or may not serve that
Mm.
function. But if you haven't even thought it through, you're not going to really know who you're speaking to or how you're speaking to them.
Mm. I was just thinking about your 3 books, your 3 coaching books, because you would have used that first one, which was your shortest, to really help kickstart your business. Is that how that was, that
Yes.
part of that?
Yes, and I wanted to use it. I had several functions for all the blueprint books. The length creep, scope creep of those books actually didn't change what the function was for me, but those books are designed for author accelerator coaches to use with their clients, and designed to help people use this framework and to get their ideas started out correctly. And what's wonderful about those books for me, so those sit at the way top of the funnel for me.
Mm.
And that means that they're there to just let people know about what book coaching is and what the systems and processes that I teach are about. And they're about, for my business, they're about awareness, which is one of the first things you think of for a business. And what I love about them and about having self-published them is that I can give them away. So I let all of our coaches can download digital copies for free. I just set up a Goodreads giveaway for the memoir for a blueprint.
Mm.
And most people, when they give away books, are giving away 5 copies or 6 copies or that kind of thing. And I'm giving away 100 copies
Right.
in my Goodreads giveaway. And I think the last time I checked, there were more than 1,000 people signed up for that contest. I love being able to do that. I was just on a podcast, and I'm going to be able to give away books to everybody who listens to that podcast. So for me, it's not about money. It's not about taking people deep into my philosophies about coaching or writing or story or narrative or business or anything. They're designed to be short, how to, quick hits of getting
Mm.
some specific work done. So
Mhm.
they function exactly perfectly how I want them to function.
Mhm. So just on that point, I'm going to send an email to everybody after we finish. So would you be happy if I included my coaching link to those,
Yeah,
to your books,
absolutely. We
in
can
that
talk about
email?
how to do that.
Mhm.
But absolutely, I think that would be wonderful. And
Great.
that's the kind of thing that I get to do, that sort of thing. And I love that, because it's then just spreading this information and spreading this knowledge, and
Mm.
hopefully it will help people and attract people to what coaching is and what coaching can do. So I'm a perfect example of, I think of these books as short books, even though the memoir one is not short. And I guess by that I mean they're not they're not philosophically deep,
Yeah.
right?
Mm. They're
They're
very
short,
practical. They're
very practical, very
mm,
prescriptive, very, very sort of how to. There's another type of book. There's a woman that I follow in business. Her name's Amy Porterfield, and she
mhm,
teaches people how to build courses and how to build online courses and how to build lists of newsletter subscribers to support those course sales. She just came out with a book, which I had nothing to do with, but I was fascinated to watch it come into the world because she has a massive audience. She's running a massive business. So when we think about what we talked about before, where in the customer journey is this book going to fall for her? And she could have made any sort of choice, but the choice she made, and I heard her speaking about this on a podcast in a very strategic way, was she, despite her very large audience, is still trying to grow her very large audience. And she realized that the way to do that was to meet people not in the place where they're looking to learn how to build a course, which is what her business does, but way up at the top of the funnel where they're still working in a corporate job.
mm,
They're displeased with that. They're tired of serving somebody else. They're thinking about doing their own thing, and they're wondering, how do I get from there to the place where I could have something that I'm selling or offering of my own. And so she wrote a book. The title is called 2 Weeks Notice, which is brilliant because it's about leaving, it's about stepping out of that corporate world. And she's walking people in this book, she's walking them through the big idea of working for your own self, leaving the safety, the so-called safety
oh,
of corporate, in this case, corporate America, and um, in talking about the shift, the mindset shift to make that transformation. That's a really different book than had she chosen to write a book, let's say, way down deep into her ecosystem, talking about her, she's a marketing guru, talking about her marketing philosophies and ideas or experiences, or that kind of a book that would be more for somebody who perhaps has already taken her course or engaged with her services in some way and wants to go deeper and spend more time.
mm,
So I thought it was a really interesting choice. And that book was an instant New York Times bestseller, which I would have been very surprised if it had not been, because she
mm,
has such a big audience. But it was just very interesting for me to see where that book sits in her
mm,
universe.
yes. But if somebody was starting out, yeah, it is really interesting. If somebody was starting out in a business, um, that's a big decision. Is like, do I just write a book that will let them know more about what I can do to help them right now? Or
Right.
I feel like
Right.
you'd need
So
to do that first, wouldn't you? And then do something like she's done, then go back and it's really, yeah, it's a really
yeah, it's
important point.
It's a really important question. So, one of the things that I think happens when somebody is wanting to write a book, a nonfiction book, to amplify their own business, is they get caught up in the idea that it has to be the big thought leader book with all their
Mm,
big thinking and their big ideas. And, they're thinking of books like, Adam Grant's books or Malcolm Gladwell or these sort of big thought leader books, and wanting to leap right to that. And sometimes that's a good idea depending on who they are or what their idea is or how they are approaching the whole thing. But other times that's a book that maybe should be their second or third book that should
mm,
come later. I think they're I'll give you a story, an example that I just love this example. I did a consulting call with two women who wanted to hire me, and they run a business. They described it as being fintech, which is financial technology. And I believe that they had created a software or an app of some kind to help women at a very particular place in their lives. And that place is right before they are going to get divorced. So they're in on a mission to help women take charge of their money at a time when many women totally give up control and end up losing a lot of power in the divorce process. So they have this mission about empowerment. They have this tool that they sell that helps women to get control of their assets and understand them and have their everything in the right place before they make the move to get divorced. And they started this company and it's going very well. And so they were thinking we want to write a book, and they came to me just filled with so much passion, the way so many entrepreneurs would be or business people would be. We want to spread the word, we want to help women, we want to get this out, it's so important to us, and this is what we're going to do, will you help us? And in this strategy call that I had with them, we started talking. They happen to have been referred to me by a previous client who is a big divorce personality. She has a big Instagram following and a big podcast following. So I worked with her on her book. So I have some divorce knowledge. and the divorce knowledge led me in this strategy call with these new writers to say, well, here's a thing we know about women going through divorce. They're not going to come to a bookstore reading. They're not going to show up and gather and announce themselves as thinking about getting divorced or being right in the middle of it. They're going through a private grieving process, logistical processes, things with their kids. They're in all these places. So how can you meet them where they are? A book traditionally published that's going to sit in a Barnes and Noble or Costco or a Target, or how traditional books are sold these days, is not going to reach those women. They're probably not going to the bookstore. They're probably sitting and crying with their friends or strategizing with people or dealing with their kids who are having difficulties or those sorts of things. So we started talking about who their reader is, who their ideal reader is, and why are they doing this, and what do they want the impact of this book to be. And in that conversation, so these are the blueprint questions. In that conversation, it came out that they have this secret person in their marketing funnel who is enormously helpful to guiding women to this software that they've made. And that person is a therapist. So they say most of our customers come from therapists who are talking with women and working with them. And the women come to the realization that they need to start thinking about divorce. And that's when the therapist will say, here's this app, here's the software, here's this thing that you need before you make any sort of moves. So we're having this conversation, and that's when I said this idea of the very short book. I said, what if, so this is before they've written a word. I've not read a word of what they've written. And I said, what if you write a very short book and you publish 10,000 copies of it and you send them to every therapist that you can find that works with this type of client? And they just sort of sat back in their chairs and they went, that's genius. That's all we want to do. So these are people who a traditional publishing deal would mean nothing to them. An agent, getting an agent would not be the right thing to them. Spending money on a book coach was not the right move for them. The right move for them was take all the time, energy, resources, money that you have, they had this 5-step process that I think is mirrored in their technology. Just write a little book on that 5-step process. That process well, you talk about it every day, you've written this software on it, make that into a little book and spend the money sending it to those people who will be the exact correct people to spread the word about your product. So the result of that call for me as a coach was I was not going to coach them because we determined that they didn't need that. But I loved the outcome of that because they knew exactly, again, why they were writing this book, who it was for, how they were going to use it in their business. It didn't matter if they made a cent on this book. They had a plan for getting it into the hands of people who could make a really big impact for them. And I love that. I think it's just a genius example of what we're talking about. If those people had done what I think they thought they were supposed to do, which is we'll write a big philosophical sort of deep dive on women and finance and marriage and empowerment, and maybe that is a good book for them to write. They could have made the choice to try to do that book at this time. Maybe they'll do that book later, but for them in this moment and what they wanted, this little book at the top of their funnel, I think is just an amazing idea.
That's a great example of, just thinking through all of those components, because if a book's part of your business, it's a bigger decision than just the book. It's the business, it's the future, it's where you want to go. No, that's a great example. So I guess the biggest difference between short and long book, just to kind of bring that together, would be a short book's going to be about a fairly narrow central idea, isn't it?
Yes, I think that's right. That it's usually something you can deliver quickly around a simple idea it's easy to explain, that is, maybe it's a model or a process or a system that you use or that you teach, that's going to perform like a lead magnet, which is attracting people into your business. And might be a simple transformation. We want a book to offer some kind of transformation journey, and it's probably going to be simple, easy, digestible. Another example of someone who does this book just so well is Seth Godin. Just his books are tiny. And have you read them?
I've read some of his. Yeah, I've got some on my shelf that I've looked at but not read properly. But yes, I'm a fan. Yes.
Yeah, they're tiny, and that reflects he's a marketing, permission marketing guy, for those who don't know Seth Godin, and he has a great newsletter that he writes that's teeny tiny. I think he writes every day.
Yes.
He was for it's crazy, but sometimes it's 2 sentences, sometimes it's 3. They're just these snippets. So for him, it wouldn't make sense in some ways for him to then go write this giant, long, deep dive thing. He writes these books that are one idea that you can quickly capture and understand and put to use as the reader. Very actionable, very again, easy to digest, easy to buy, easy to press into somebody's hands. If you press a big book like Cal Newport's Deep Work. Did you read Deep Work?
No.
It's a hard read. It's dense, and it's makes you think, and it makes you stop, and it makes you turn down the dog ear the page and come back to it and start again, and which is an incredible experience for a reader to have. Sometimes we want that experience, but that's not going to function the way Seth Godin's books function. So that's a short book, and those longer books are going to be more holistic about a philosophy or an idea that's a big idea. And it might have many moving parts. It might have a much bigger transformation for the reader, and probably not so much step-by-step actionable, here's what you do. Probably more thought-based, story-based, that sort of maybe research or interview-based, that sort of thing, where that's going to be a longer book to design and structure, a longer book to write, you're probably going to want to think about it sitting on the shelf for a long time. So
Yeah.
a more timely, no, timeless, more
Mm.
timeless kind of a thing.
Great.
Yeah.
I guess a good analogy for me anyway is a short book is like, let's have a coffee together so we can get to know a little bit about each other. And during that coffee, my book can help you with something that you can go away and take. Um, and then the longer book is like, well, let's go and have a weekend together and, dive deeper. So,
Yeah, I love that.
and I think
Another, oh, go ahead.
no, as I said, I think the key part that you mentioned there is that transformation. Even in a short book, it's about the reader, isn't it? It's about what can the reader get from this that was going to help them solve a problem, take a step, do something with. Yeah, it's not
Right,
about
right.
the author.
That's right. Right. So it's a book that is a great example of this is Creativity Inc. by Ed Catmull, which is the story of his tenure and time starting Pixar, the movie company Pixar. And it's this epic long story about how as a kid he loved animation and he wanted to build a computer, and how he met Steve Jobs, and it's just this whole long epic story, and it's riveting. I loved it. But there's the Pixar years and the starting of the business and the whole thing, and buried deep within that book is a description of the process that Pixar uses to evaluate their movies. There's a body, like a board, called the Brain Trust, and the Brain Trust has a particular method of giving feedback, and I believe it has 7 steps. This method of giving feedback, or 7 rules to giving feedback. And that this is a great example, because in this whole long giant story there's this one chapter on this idea of the brain trust and giving feedback. And I always think, every time because I'm always paging through that book to look for that chapter, and I'm always thinking Ed Catmull needs to write just that book, just about how does the brain trust function, what is good feedback, or he has a term called good notes. How do you give good notes? And that could have been the book, and that would have been a little actionable step-by-step taste of how Pixar gives feedback. Be a great book. He should write it if he's listening. But it's part of this whole long giant transformation and journey, which is about the creative process and about codifying processes to elicit creativity in people. So they're both part of the same idea. They're just two very different approaches to the same idea. And in terms of a book, they would be two really different books.
Excellent. Actually, I've got a friend on the call. Her daughter's an illustrator. Dolores is on the call. So what was the name of that book again?
Creativity Inc. INC.
Excellent. Thank you.
By Ed Catmull.
Great. So a couple
It's
of
a
other
great one.
a couple of other questions there. So let's just move to them. Somebody has asked about is there any training for writing for children? Book coaching.
Oh, at Author Accelerator, no, not specifically. We have quite a number of very accomplished coaches working in middle grade and YA, and they use our tools and other tools to help people do that. But I would say below middle grade, our program is probably not very effective. If you're thinking about picture books or chapter books, but there is an organization that I can recommend. Let's see if I can type in here. Yeah, I think it's called, if I have it correct, I think it's literally the 12 by 12, like the numbers 12 by 12. And it's a organization that helps people with picture book development. And some of our coaches are participants and members of that group, and they say that it's wonderful. And it's wonderful for writers, it's wonderful for coaches. It sounds like an amazing community. So I might not have it right, but if you Google children's book community 12 by 12, the 12 by 12 is writing 12 books in 12 months. That's how I know that part
Mm,
is right.
sounds
You will
great.
probably
Mm,
find it. And then the other resource I can recommend is the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. The acronym for that is SCBWI. It's a very robust and well-respected organization for children's book writers, and they do include in SCBWI middle grade and YA as well, but I know they hit the picture book, chapter book piece as well. So those are two resources I would recommend, and our program would not be great for those parts of the process.
thank you. No, that's fantastic. And Melita has a question about the length of short books. What would you
Oh, that's
recommend?
such a good question. So, Melita, the thing about word count is, in order to answer questions about word count, we have to go back to your why. Why are you writing this book? Who are you writing it for? What is the function? And how are you going to publish it? So there's so many different ways to publish a book. And word counts come from, I mean, Bev, you're going to, after I finish this, I hope, correct me or add to it, because I know this is your actual work. But the way that books are bound, and the way that the pages were bound together, and how many of those bindings made up a typical book, and much more than that was going to be too expensive to print and to ship. And so word counts came from that demand of the literal printing process, and how readers become trained in how long they expect books to be, or not to be. There's always books that totally break the rules. This new novel by blanking on everything, which is a thing I do, both the title and his name. It's a guy who wrote Cutting for Stone, Abraham Verghese, I think. I think his new book, which was just an Oprah book club pick, I think it's like 800 pages, so there's always people that are going to break the rules. So you need to really think about, are you trying to get a traditional publishing deal? Because there are guidelines and rules for that. Usually, typically, they're going to want a book that's probably minimum 45,000 words would be short for them. But there's much shorter books. The ones I was mentioning, The Coaching Habit is a hybrid publisher, the hybrid publisher. Seth Godin brought out his own books, his own early books, is an independent writer. So when you're publishing in those ways, you are not beholden to word count rules. So you can kind of do whatever you want. Bev, do you have thoughts on that?
Well, I know Melita's is a career coach, so she's just added a note there. Her book is a how-to book based on her career coaching methodology. So I think that 30,000 words would work. Very much, like you said, a case of what you want to use your book for, and what you will achieve, or what you want to achieve with it. How much is this a question? How much do I want to give away? Do you find people are really worried about that? Like, how much do I
Yes.
want? Yeah.
Yes. And I have learned from other experts not to be worried about that. A lot of the people that are really teaching marketing and intellectual property will talk about giving away. So in the marketing of your work, giving away a lot of content, and that the giving away, you could do an entire book on a blog or a newsletter, and then package it together as a book and sell it, and your followers will still buy it. Like there's there is there's something about a book and bringing everything together into one place. I think the question about giving away too much is tied more to how are you using this book. So giving away too much would, I mean, you said this earlier, Bev, there is no shortage of information in the world right now. You can look up anything on you know, you can find how to do anything, or steps or processes or insights or what have you. But what you can't find is somebody that you trust to lead you through a process, and that's what a book can provide. So the giving away the information is only part of the experience of the book. There's the way you convey that information, and the experience that you are drawing the reader through, and what you're drawing them toward, the style with which you do that. All of those things are what are important as well. It's not just the facts or the information that you're sharing. So I don't I'm not afraid of giving away too much information, or of people doing that. It tends to be kind of an old-fashioned idea. I think there's, gosh, so much sharing in the world right now. People expect it. They expect you to be putting content out there and sharing it and talking about it, and you can then take that content and make it whatever you're using. I mean, this also touches on the idea of, is a book, the function of the book in terms of money. So usually writing a nonfiction book is not going to make you a lot of money. Writing any book is not going to make you a lot of money. What's going to make you the money is using that book to sell something else, or sell some other service or process or thing. It's so giving away too much in a book, if it's leading people to you for this other thing that you're doing, then that's okay. that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, your book's about your blueprint books are a great example of that, because that's the methodology.
Right.
Doesn't mean it's easy to apply the methodology and actually do the work and get the result, but there it is.
That's
there's
right.
the methodology. So that's where the coach comes in, and it's
That's
probably
right.
the same for many people on the call. Just very aware of the time, so if anyone's got a quick question, just pop it in, otherwise we'll.
And Melita, I hope we answered yours.
I'm sure that was very helpful.
I actually worked with a career coach not too long ago, and it was interesting because their clientele was new college graduates, and so the book was going to be quite short, because it was determined that they don't have time and they don't have the attention span, and they're on their phones all day anyway. So sometimes it depends on who you're targeting in terms of a career book. There's also, I could imagine, a book for somebody changing careers. I'm just making this up off the top of my head. Let's say a mom coming back from being at home with their children, re-entering the workplace, a longer book that would help with, how do you deal with lost knowledge and technology? How do you deal with your confidence? How do you approach networking when your contacts are old? That sort of deep dive into some meaty topics would warrant a longer book for people that wanted to really dig into something and kind of rest in it more. So that's how I would think about length too, is who is it for and how are they going to use it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much, Jenny, for giving us your time in a very busy time.
It was fun.
Yeah, it's great. And welcome to, I meant to welcome you to Australia at the start. So have you done any calls with a largely Australian audience before?
This is my first, Bev.
Awesome. Okay, that is awesome.
Hi, Australia.
So what I'll do, I'll organise this after we've gone offline. I'll organise an email. In the email, I'll put links back to your site, Author Accelerator site. Anything else we mentioned today, I do have the link where people can download the e-copies of your book, so I've got that already, so I can do that. And some information about my services if you're thinking of writing a short book, because that's something I'd love to do more of. So Dolores, I do have a couple of more questions. All right. Dolores, can you see the questions there, Jenny?
Oh, yes. Am I finding that people generally don't have much time to devote to reading a long book? Are there trends showing that short books are more in demand? I'm not aware of any reports on that. Books are actually selling really well across lots of categories these days, as well as they've ever sold, really. So I think it's more a matter of connecting what you want to do with your reader and what they want, and thinking about how they're going to use that book. My daughter's pregnant, for example, and there are a lot of books designed for pregnant women that are 9 months long for obvious reasons. So is that would dictate how you might organize that book, or how it might be structured, or how they might use that book. So it's really thinking about meeting your ideal reader where they are and giving them what they need, rather than any sort of external trend, if that makes sense.
That makes
And I see the question about, what about a book or card deck? Can the book coach program address something like this, or the creation of a kit or workbook? That's a good question. We have coaches who will do anything. You can probably find someone to help with anything. I would think Bev, for example, I mean, a card deck or workbook in my mind is a short book, right? So maybe you start by going to Bev, and if she can't help you, or that's not the right fit for you, we do have a directory of our coaches at Author Accelerator, which you can find at authoraccelerator.com/match me, and you can search there for a book coach who can help you. I would look for somebody who can help with a particular topic that you have, but start with Bev. That's what I would do.
Yeah, and it's a great community, because sometimes I refer people back to the community, or I'll find somebody in the book coaching community to help with a client with something. So it's a great resource. And my philosophy is, if I can't help you, I'll find somebody that can. So
yes.
And Lisa's one of our coaches, one of your coaches, one of us.
Lisa, yes, she is. Hi, Lisa.
Okay.
I'm glad that was helpful to you.
Great. Okay, well, look, thanks again, Jenny, and it was wonderful to have you here with us today in Australia, and I wish you all a happy Thursday, Friday, and week. I have a big birthday on Saturday, so it's my birthday
Oh, happy
weekend. Yeah,
birthday.
thank you. Great way to
Thank you for
celebrate.
having me.
You're very welcome. Bye, everybody.